Week 6 of the NFL season is here. Pro Football Ireland, lads, ladies, everyone listening, in what is potentially a monumental weekend for sport on this island, the biggest in 34-ish years. We've got a London game. We've got week 6 of the NFL season as well. Please God, we're all laughing. Come Sunday morning, Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Jason Hayes on Ireland's biggest NFL podcast, Pro Football Ireland. Looking ahead to the action. Mark, we'll start with you, my friend. Has your voice recovered from last weekend?
Getting better. I think it was better than the Scala podcast. I was told if I don't improve, I have to stay home from work, not by the bosses, but by someone I work with who doesn't want to get sick before the Ireland matches this weekend. So let's let's hope I don't get someone sick, Michael.
Jason, I'm about to go full culture. There's a lot of COVID going about. There's a lot of COVID going around in Tyrone and Armagh before any Kerry person starts to jokes. But hopefully everyone's feeling safe, feeling okay. And Jason, could you have an Aaron Rodgers-like return to action for Frankfurt in a few weeks that we're not aware of yet?
Oh, I don't know. I won't be getting ahead of myself. Slow and steady. That's what I've realised these last few weeks. Just as you think you're making a big leap, then it all slows down again. So a lot of monotonous exercises keep me going, but I might be watching from my couch again. But I'm sure you guys will be over there to represent.
Please God, and we're looking forward to seeing you, Jason. For people listening or watching to this, we've got a heap of live dates with Jeff Reinebold, actually one with Phoebe Schechter in Belfast next month. linktr.ee/NFL Ireland. There's also a date, Jason's a Cork by. There's only 8% of tickets left for Cork. It's going to be a big night in January. If I have to drive down, you have to drive down, folks. Come on down. It's going to be a good crack. Check out all the dates there. We're presented by 888 Sport, the official betting partner of the NFL in Ireland and the UK. And week 6 gets underway with, apparently, Mark Hogan's rated them 32nd in the league. The Denver Broncos going to the Kansas City Chiefs. We got a game on Sunday in London, the last London game of the year. 3-2 Ravens at the 2-3 Tennessee Titans, a few thousand kilometers / miles away. Commanders and Falcons, Vikings, Bears, Seahawks, Bengals, Niners at the Browns. Shout out to the Irish Niners for having our watch party this weekend. Saints at the Texans, Colts at the Jags, Panthers at the Dolphins. Wow. Patriots at the Raiders, Lions, Bucks, Cards, Rams, Eagles, Jets. Sunday Night Football is the New York Giants at the Buffalo Bills. And Monday Night Football, boys, is a beezer and a half. Cowboys, Chargers in LA. Mark, are you looking forward to London on Sunday? It's going to be nice, isn't it? Just, obviously fresh heads, Guinness Zero Saturday night during the rugby, water, Uska, no more than that. See you at 8:30 in Stansted Airport on Sunday morning. Deal?
Flown, hasn't it? Like, we were looking forward to this slate for months, obviously, since it was announced, and then we had it all to look forward to. And yeah, suddenly we're going into the final one. I don't know what population or I suppose size of the population is going to be heading over to the Frankfurt games. It'd be really interesting. Obviously, there's 2 weekends now. I think a lot of people heard about the crack that was there last year, and even if they haven't got a ticket, might be going over. But otherwise, yeah, it kind of feels like the end of our impact on the global scale with this game happening this weekend. Obviously, we know there's loads of Irish go to the London games, but it'll be interesting to see if the same turnout's going to be there for Frankfurt. Obviously, it's slightly more expensive. I'm not going to say it's that much more expensive. I know hotel rooms are definitely more affordable in Frankfurt versus London, but then the flight goes up. So we'll see how it goes. Of course, we're fortunate to be going or whatever. But yeah, there's a bittersweetness to it's the last London game when it really feels like we're having an impact, and we have to press pause for another year.
I've had the experience of going out of both Dublin and Belfast airports. Great crack both weekends. It's been great meeting boys. Shout out to your boy in the Lions top from Belfast last week, who was a Buffalo Bills fan and not a Lions fan. He wanted to switch it up on Sunday. So shout out to you, my friend. Good meeting luck here. It was actually, there was more people on that flight on Sunday morning, Jason, from Belfast than there was in Dublin the week before, which is weird. I guess it was a big game as well. Jason, I'd love to ask you this because I feel like me and Mark have talked to the death about it, and we'll swiftly move on from it after this here, and we will have obviously a lot of content on Sunday morning from Tottenham, and a big thanks to everybody for making that happen also, folks. Jason, Mark was in the doldrums. Great seats in Tottenham, Mark, by the way. But Jason, you were watching it at home on the TV. I don't know how I came across, but for me, it just looked like it's one thing talking about the advantage the Jags truly had. Jason, we're going to go down the stretch here. If there's a situation in the next 2 to 3 years where Jacksonville do their stadium up, they could have a serious advantage playing in a different country, say 2 or 3 weeks a month for 2 or 3 months a season. It was so evident, and I love the experience. I love the game. But I felt like, Buffalo should have got over there. And I guess going into this week's as well, Jason, if you do want to touch on it, the last time that John Harbaugh came over, all he done was yap, 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 yap. The Ravens have been over since Monday night. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they play, especially when Tennessee are only going to come in on Thursday night this week. So you would think they have the advantage.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's massive. Like you could see, as you say, I was watching on TV, but you could almost feel the lack of energy coming from the Bills team early on, even just sitting on my couch. Maybe the jet lag started to wear off towards the end when they did finally get that spark going, but the advantage was just completely clear for Jaguars throughout the game, despite the fact that, and you guys can talk about this more if you like, but on television it came across like it felt like a home game for the Buffalo Bills. I don't recall seeing a London game that had so much of one fan actually rooting for the team on the pitch rather than kind of mix of fans from around all 32 teams. It really looked like a sea of blue out there. But it just goes to show that that whole time zone and jet lag thing is more important than having the fans behind your back, because they weren't able to wake up the Bills team in the end. Well, it'll be interesting now though, and you say if the Jaguars, if they do in future adopt this approach of playing a few weeks in a row in London, whether it is during a stadium build, I'm interested to see how they perform now that they're back in America this week. Will it have the opposite effect now that they've fully acclimatized to that London time zone? Will they be able to hit the ground running and carry on back in Jacksonville? I'm sure they will. I'm sure the time zone effect is lessened when you're going that way. At least from personal experience, I always find it easier to go that way than to come back across. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to watch. And another interesting thing to point out is just that prior to 2022, the 60 teams that played in London, just 4 of them played the week after they arrived back in the States. And the NFL actually gives the teams an opportunity to decide whether they want to take that bye directly after that London game. But it definitely seems like the tide is turning and teams are taking a different approach. Because last year we saw the Saints, the Vikings, the Giants, the Jags, and the Packers all play in the States as soon as they returned from London. And 4 of those 5 teams actually won, so it didn't affect them too much. And the Broncos took a bye again this year. The Falcons went back and won last week. The Bills are playing this week. The Jaguars are playing this week. The Ravens are playing next week after being in London this week. So they're all electing to save their bye for later in the season, seemingly believing that the necessity to take a bye straight after London is no more. So I'm not sure really what's gone into that and why so many teams are passing up that bye, but it seems to be working.
I guess it's got more international, hasn't it? It's one of those things. It's like I guess me and you'll move on because we'll be racking people's heads on Sunday. But Mark, it's been a great few weeks, and I know the appetite has been wet for Frankfurt big time, and I fully agree with what Jason said. And he's mentioned there the Colts Jags, that game this weekend. Gardner Minshew, he was thrust into the league when this guy. Has anybody ever heard of Nick Foles? Nick Foles broke a collarbone against the Kansas City Chiefs a few years ago, and Gardner Minshew ended up starting 12 games that season, winning 6. The year after, it didn't work out, 1-15. In comes Trevor Lawrence, in comes Urban Meyer, out goes the Mississippi mudflap and Gardner Minshew. And now Minshew, we're probably going to see him in Frankfurt in a few weeks at this point, Mark. Minshew has the opportunity to get a bit of revenge against this Jacksonville team this week. This is a really interesting game because, as we've talked about just off camera, both are fleeing too. This is for the top of the division as it stands. Anthony Richardson is RG3 Mark II as far as I'm concerned. And you've got a really interesting situation there at running back for the Colts. But Mark, the Jags genuinely have been so impressive from the way they played in London to the way they handled themselves, but how fresh they were, how good they looked at certain points in that game against Buffalo. And can I just say, Mark, as well, Shad Khan's got the most beautiful moustache. I've ever seen in person. Beautiful. I can only dream of growing one. So nice. The London Jaguars, Mark, as you called them on the WhatsApp or the Instagram reel. What am I talking about? Go for it, Mark.
Londonville Jaguars, which they are.
Londonville.
I feel like everyone. I'm not going to say get carried away. I really, really enjoyed watching them the other day. I thought there was a lot good. I thought the movement out of Trevor Lawrence was as big as the movement out of Travis Etienne. But I think that we're forgetting that they didn't play well after the first quarter against the Falcons, and they're not yet an absolute surefire team. I mean, I have them pretty high in the power rankings at the moment, and it kind of feels a bit disingenuous because I don't know, do I have that belief in them? I really like the Jaguars and was all set up for them to do well this year. It's kind of funny when you're talking there, Jason, about, and look, before I say this, I have to put the asterisk next to it. There's so many different ways to break down stats. Like, there is a stat for everything. But when you're saying that teams that weren't taking the bye, I wonder what input do they have to say, oh, can we play not a gimme team, but maybe we don't want to go home and play the Kansas City Chiefs or something like that we won a lesser game. And the Jaguars, when they're going back now, maybe they could have been given a bye, or they're said, do you want a team that has a rookie quarterback starting for them that you don't know if Jonathan Taylor is going to be involved this year, you know, back in whenever the schedule was being made back in March or whatever.
All I'll say is every team that's playing back in the States after London, they were all home games at least, so they weren't travelling on the road as soon as they went back to America. They all had a home game. I'm not sure what kind of input they have.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways to slice it, really. But this, I suppose, if you say on paper, though, is one of those games that is super important because, like you alluded to, Michael, it's 3-2 and it's for the top of the division. As far as I'm concerned, this is where the season starts for the Indianapolis Colts. Like, we've seen them through the first few weeks, but they have Jonathan Taylor back now, and you have Zach Moss who's been found, and it's like, wow, like, what a backfield to be able to have, because, and especially when you have your quarterback going out. Now, look, I think Gardner Minshew is probably the man for the job now anywhere, just where we sit right now, because like you said, Michael, talk about an order G3 wannabe, like, he just can't stay healthy, Anthony Richardson. But you have Gardner Minshew, who has played this year, has played well this year. He's 68% completion percentage. He's come in and been a part of wins against the Texans, the Ravens, and the Titans last week. He's a very capable backup, if not the best backup in the NFL. And when you now have Zach Moss in the return game for Jonathan Wilson go 22 for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, that, like, he's playing for his, like, we know that Jonathan Taylor's just got the massive contract, so he's going to play, but, like, can anyone say who the number one running back right now in Indianapolis is?
Well, it's the most Indianapolis Colts thing ever, Jason. Like what Mark just said there about Jonathan Taylor, it's ridiculous. When I seen the notification pop up, I just started laughing. I was like, this is so typical. And for Zach Moss to go out and have the day that he had, Jason, it just sums it up. But now this week, watch both running backs get under 50 yards rushing.
Yeah, just Taylor just had 6 carries, so they're really easing him back into it. 6 carries for 18 yards, so 3 yards per carry. And if you were to do the maths on the numbers Mark just gave, Zach Moss at 7.2 yards per carry. So I said it last week, you know, with how well Zach Moss is actually playing for the Colts right now, I'm not sure how much better a team they are just because of Jonathan Taylor, because the production's been there already at that position. Key moving forward now is just can Gardner Minshew really just take this team, because he's going to have to lead them for the next 4 to 8 weeks, I think is the timeline I've saw. Completely agree. He could be the right man for the job. He's just kind of well established himself as that fringe starter / best backup in the league right now. Nice chill guy off the field. You know, I don't think there'll be any drama there, in the sense that he knows what his role is. He's stepping in. He's happy in this backup role, and to you know, clock up a few wins whenever he's needed. So I think he's a coach's dream to have on the sideline. But there's got to be a bit of concern in that building right now about Anthony Richardson. Concussion, an ankle injury, and a shoulder injury. 3 injuries in just 5 weeks.
And ones that didn't take a whole lot of contact to get. Exactly, like, it's not like he's gone through the ringer or something.
Is he RG3 part 2 though? It's like watching RG3, boys. He went down like bricks every time. And I loved watching him, and he's fun to watch, and he has some awesome moments, and he's a great guy. But when he went down, he went down. I mean, like, are we watching just like a repeat of that again, lads?
For all the reasons that you've just listed, yes, I think so. Like, it's crazy. It's absolutely. But like, it was coming into the year. It's if this guy stays healthy, like we were saying that going into the year, because he's just so big and like he looks incredible.
Yeah.
But like, it's not taking a whole lot to bring him down. Like 5 games into his career and 3 separate injuries. Like, that's insane.
It's insane. Have you any final words in this matchup, Jason, or should I move swiftly on?
No, yeah, just I think it will. I think Garner Minshew is a good person to step in, but it will be a tough test. Jaguars' defense has proven themselves a few times now this year already. I think they've definitely exceeded expectations. So that's the side of the ball I'm most interested in watching. I think the Colts will have a tough test to win this game because of I'd expect Trevor Lawrence to put up close to 30 points, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to keep up on the other side of the ball.
We're looking forward to that game this weekend. It's going to be a good crack. Let's talk about the big one this weekend. The 1-4 New England Patriots against the 2-3 Las Vegas Raiders. Bill Belichick against Josh McDaniels. And Mark, for people that are wondering on this podcast or listening to this podcast in Ireland that are Patriots fans and are thinking, or Raiders fans and are thinking, I'd love to tank. I don't ever see a strategy where Robert Kraft or Bill Belichick will ever pursue or, frankly, analyze a strategy of tanking. We talked about the Colts a minute ago. Look what they done 12 years ago. The suck for luck campaign, which cost both the GM, the team president, their jobs, and they had to start again. It's not as easy as that. And I've seen a lot of comments on social media this week about people saying, well, if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. But we talked to James in the podcast a few days ago about just the situation that New England are in and the issues they have, but certainly Las Vegas have got issues as well. And this is going to be a really interesting game because I feel like Bill O'Brien is almost being given like a reset button this week, whereas the Raiders have got question marks. They've got some fantastic performers, for example, Max Crosby, but something has to give. Something has to give this week. The Raiders have to win this game. This Patriots team, Mark, is nowhere near where it should be. This surely is a Raiders game to lose. Tell me I'm wrong. Start now.
I have no idea which way it goes, Michael, because obviously the coaching teams know each other inside out. Like Josh McDaniels obviously is a New England protege. He was groomed by Bill Belichick to become a head coach. So like they know how one another operates, but I think that obviously Bill Belichick is the better historical coach, but I think, even whatever slights are against him this year, that what stood out for me for Josh McDaniels is an absolute lack of aggression in games. Like, it's not like they're blowing teams out of the water or whatever, but when they played Green Bay on the weekend, or what was that, Monday, like, he still took one of those, you see them, the analytics say afterwards about how it wasn't a gutsy call, or that, it was a sacrifice, whatever, the surrender scale. And he goes for that. Daniel Carlson missed a field goal that gave the Green Bay Packers back the ball, their own 35-yard line. A field goal would have tied the game up. It ended up not costing them the game, but the call there was to go for the first down and, keep it to yourself, or keep your fate within yourself. It did cost them in week 2 against the Steelers when he could have seen the game out, but they don't get a field goal, and whatever happened. Everyone remembers they gave the ball back to the Steelers or whatever, and they lose the game. So I think that the point that I'm saying here is that he isn't aggressive enough. Bill Belichick has always thrived on being aggressive and making you beat yourself. So if one, he knows how to beat Josh McDaniels, and 2, Josh McDaniels is kind of beating himself anyway with poor play calling, I kind of give the advantage to New England in that sense, because like I haven't seen a whole lot of good from the Raiders. Like, what, I'm going to say that how they beat the Packers the other day was good? No.
Jason, like, to be fair to the Patriots, they've had some really disappointing news on the injury front in the last week with they've had to bring in J.C. Jackson, because you've seen Gonzalez go out for the season, a really, really promising rookie as well, and Matthew Judon is out, and when it rains it pours, but frankly their offensive football is non-existent. To not score a point for me, Jason, against the Saints last weekend only makes me feel that somehow the Raiders will bounce over the line in Vegas this week, and the Patriots are going to have to prove me wrong. Jason, I guess as well on this, do you feel like this is last chance saloon for Mac Jones this week?
It's really a tough one with Mac Jones, because I just don't see a scenario where the backup can step in and do better. It's the whole offense is just a nightmare scenario to work in. Story leaked early in the week. Someone from Mac Jones's camp, supposedly. Not sure of this reliability of the story, but I think it was the New York Post or something ran with it. But he called the talent around Mac Jones garbage, and just says he has nothing to work with on offense. And to be honest, I can see exactly what he means by that, whether it's true or not. I don't think Belichick has done enough to help out Mac Jones and make life easier on him over the past couple of off seasons, particularly at that wide receiver position, where you really need those big strong names and strong targets to go towards for a young quarterback. I mentioned how McDaniels has made some questionable data-led decisions the past few weeks, almost kind of taking old-fashioned approaches, and I think that's what Belichick might be doing as well with his roster. I'm not one to question arguably the greatest coach of all time, but he's not placing as much value on some of these positions, such as wide receiver, as other teams around the league are placing them in this day and age. He's perhaps looking back at past Super Bowls where they won with kind of no-name receivers at the time, so to speak. Maybe trying to recreate that, but there's no reason why they shouldn't have a DeAndre Hopkins or just a big name that Mac Jones can go to and rely on the offense, and it's definitely hurting them. Mac Jones as well was, Mac Jones had his best year in 2021 under Josh McDaniels. So interesting to see how the offense has just gone downhill since McDaniels has left. It's not like McDaniels has the Raiders offense firing on all cylinders, but maybe these two coaches are just better together than fighting on Sunday.
Yeah, time will tell. I feel like we'll have the fallout from that on Sunday night on the podcast with Michaela and Connor. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to annoying Mark in the taxi on Sunday with the podcast as well. Can't wait for that. The last time Seattle played Cincinnati was in 2019. I had more strands of hair on my head, and it was just what it was. I didn't know any of it was. Time changes, and there was a guy playing for LSU called Joe Burrow. He was about to get picked number 1 in the draft, and the Seahawks beat the Bengals that day. And this year, it's intriguing. We've seen, Mark, sort of the jump that the Seahawks had last year, and they've been able to sustain what they've done so far in 4 weeks. They just, quite frankly, embarrassed the New York Giants on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago. And it's weird because a week 5 bye is early. But that's just that's the card that they were dealt, and they've had that time to sort of line up and relax a bit. And you guys seen that 34-20 win against your Cardinals that the Bengals had last week, and to sort of see that situation with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, guys getting loose, feeling more positive, and you can see that slowly but surely, Mark, Cincinnati are coming back into it, and you feel like this could be a game with a fresh Seattle team, a Cincinnati team coming into themselves. This could be one of the games of the week.
Yeah, I think so. Like, Seattle is kind of a funny one for me because, they just had the week off. The week before that was the Giants one that you hardly had to watch because it was the Giants. You weren't paying too much attention. When they lost to the Rams, that was a coming out game for the Rams. That was back in week 1, right? And then when they lost to the Lions the next week, I just didn't know what to think of them. They went on to beat the Carolina Panthers after that. But I was surprised when James Scahill said on the Scahill NFL podcast to us that he doesn't really know, could Seattle take a leap? I think they could, something similar to last year. They're working really well off play action this year because obviously with the running back room that they have and the receivers, in week 1 Geno Smith didn't look too electric, but I suppose people are hoping that he goes back to being absolutely lights out, which was kind of strange from last year, but they still have a really competent offense. The defense, what's been surprising so far, is taking a bit of a step back, but not you don't have to be firing on all cylinders at this point. We're saying that the Cincinnati Bengals have just clicked and suddenly they're a powerhouse team. So it's like I have faith in the Seahawks coming up good. And I'm kind of hoping for both teams that, like you pointed out, because they're fresh now, that because it's against the Bengals, I hope that the Bengals show up again. Like I mentioned on that podcast, and Jason, I'll let you in here. Again, I thought that the Cardinals, the score wasn't reflective of how good they were, certainly through 3 quarters. But the Bengals showed so many promising signs, and I mentioned them on the podcast. So if anyone wants to hear that, you can go back and listen to it. I'll let Jason actually have a say. But there was a lot to like from the Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow connection in particular, that it could be like one of those games now that has gone under the radar, and people are like, whoa, who knew that there was so many levels to this game and so many aspects and different kind of creases to both teams that's worth paying attention to.
I saw a bet online, and it's just one of those bets where you're just like, why didn't I think of that? It was like $50 returned $8,000, and it was just spamming Jamar Chase, like 2 plus touchdowns, 150 yards, 10 catches, whatever it was. But in hindsight, it just seems so obvious, just because that Cardinals defense seemed like a good matchup for him to break out and have his big breakout game. I will just temper my expectations. I think the biggest thing to come from that game is that Joe Burrow looked good, and he looked like he was able to move around. A couple of his touchdowns came from outside the pocket, and he was just able to do things that he wasn't able to do earlier in the season. But I would temper my expectations. I think this will be a good test against Seattle, who, their defense isn't a force by any means, but it's better than Arizona's. So it'll be interesting to see, can they keep that progress going? And if they can get into this bye 3-3, it'll be a huge win. Is it bye next week, isn't it? Or maybe it's 2 weeks.
It's the bye next week, and then they're the 49ers and Bills. I kind of thought they'd be doing well to get through this stretch at 2-2, i.e. they'd have to beat the Cardinals and Seahawks. But I gave them no hope a week ago to win this game, and now I think it could be really good.
Yeah, and it should be good on both sides of the ball, because Arizona were able to move that on the Bengals defense. I think we should see Seattle have some success with that play action if they can establish that run game. I'd love to see the rookie wide receiver Jackson Smith, Nigba. Not sure how to pronounce that right. Njigba. I'd like to see him break out. He hasn't had much of a role to play in the offense so far. It is tough when you have, 2 receivers like Lockett and Metcalf, and you're operating out of 12 personnel a lot with 2 tight ends on the pitch. But yeah, that'd be nice. That's how I think the Seattle offense can really take a next step forward if they get another wide receiver, another weapon for Geno Smith to aim towards. But it should be a good game. Looking forward to it.
And it's interesting when you say that there, because that's kind of where Christian Watson came last year. He had a slow start to the season, and all of a sudden broke out. Now, it was obviously for different reasons. He wasn't healthy and able to stay on the field. But that's what I'd be excited for with Seattle, that they have that crease, especially maybe they said they planned it after the bye. Come week 6, this is when we're going to be able to knock that guy, because Jackson Smith and Jigba, he is such a complimentary receiver, and that's why everyone was excited for what could happen. I think that's why people are tempering the expectations of it, being like, hey, we thought this was going to explode straight off the bat, but it hasn't. But Jason, I have to say, the way Joe Burrow was just absorbing those hits the other day, he was taking sacks and making plays afterwards. That's what I was really impressed with.
Yeah, and it's not... I don't think I'd ever questioned his ability to take a hit, but his ability to kind of evade the sacks and, step side to side, and just seeing some of that mobility come back is definitely a huge thing for the Bengals offense, because they were so one-dimensional before that. It was a case of not being able to stature in the pocket, not being able to move, looking at a first read. If he's not open, maybe have time to look at a second read, and then you're trying to get rid of it. Whereas if you can step around, move up, move outside the pocket, avoid a bit of pressure, that's where you can work through your progressions properly, and that's when he's most dangerous, because he is an absolute wizard in terms of breaking down a defense and just beating a team with his mind, so being able to move around is huge. Arizona's pass rush isn't the strongest, and they didn't manage to get to him too much, so it wasn't the toughest matchup. If Seattle can stress him out a bit more, we'll see if he can still have a repeat performance, but it's definitely positive signs.
positive signs, not just for them, but for Seattle also generally, when you got Kenneth Walker, who is 5th in the list of running backs with the most games with at least 2 rushing touchdowns in the first 20 career games, shares that with Jim Brown, Eric Dickerson, Clinton Portis, Steve Van Buren. Yeah, this is going to be a great game, boys. It's going to be a great game. I'm going to take Seattle. I think Seattle are going to run all over them.
It's a good tough one as well. Like you have the Eagles and 49ers now really have just established themselves as the 2 best teams in the NFC. Lions may be right behind them, but the rest of the NFC it seems wide open. Like, and if a team like Seattle can push on now, it's there for the taking.
It's so early as well, which is great. I love it, boys. I love it. Headache. I'm enjoying this weekly segment. Enjoying it even more after my pick last week. Mark, do I get a congratulations or a well done? Or
who did we go last week?
I picked Jaleel McLaughlin.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I literally looked him up today because I was like, wait, how did he go again? Because obviously he didn't pay too much attention. Yeah, no, he had a great game.
I was actually surprised at how well he done. And this week, I'm going to stay similarly. I'm going to go early. So if people are listening to this on Friday, you can laugh at me. Broncos play the Chiefs this week in Thursday Night Football. There's more chance of me and Jason winning the Rose of Tralee together than there is of the Denver Broncos winning against the Kansas City Chiefs in Thursday Night Football. That being said, the reason I'm saying that is because Travis Kelce's questionable at the time of recording. We're recording on the Wednesday night. Even if he plays, he'll be gone by the half because they'll be out in the lead that much. And I've got Noah Gray, backup tight end for the Chiefs. He's got, I think so far this season, he's had like 140, 150 yards receiving. I'll take 1 or 2 touchdowns for Noah Gray. Garbage time tomorrow night. I think he'll light it up against Denver. I think this will be one of the worst Broncos performances in a long time outside of the Miami game, which I just don't count anymore. They're an embarrassment. And I turned it off last week. And when I say I turned it off, I turned my phone off in the airport. Disgrace. Get them all out. Start again. But thank you, Jaleel, for making me look half decent in terms of analytical data. Noah Gray, at least 1 touchdown this week. I'm going to say 2. Marcus, who are you going to pick from the Houston Texans this week?
Do you know what? I actually went for someone that we're going to see in London this week because I like being able to touch on the game a little bit. But it was one, not a last minute one, but it's because of its last minuteness that I think it'll be a headache for the Ravens preparing for none other than DeAndre Hopkins. He had a game on the weekend, like he was poor, for lack of a better word, really, through the first few weeks, and it was kind of one of those that was like, oh yeah, that was expected. He was never going to be the same player, yada, yada, yada. He went off there, maybe looked like there was a bit of chemistry between himself and Ryan Tannehill. 8 for 140. He looked like a beast, and I think that the Ravens were thinking they'll get to see him in London, and he's not the player that they once were, and now they're thinking, well, we're going to have to focus on him this week. You know, he's not going to give us the week off. So I think, not that DeAndre Hopkins, we're going to definitely see lights out from him or anything, but I think in terms of getting ready for him now this week, it's like, okay, he's put up 1 game of film. What can we take from that?
Who you got, Jason?
I like that. That's a nice spin on the segment. They don't have to produce. It's a nice almost excuse getting out of the way early. I like that, Mark. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter on the Eagles, defensive tackle, the rookie, of course, who's burst onto the scene through 5 weeks. A few players I can mention on that Eagles defensive front, of course, but we'll go with Jalen. Amongst all defensive tackles in the league, not just rookie defensive tackles, Jalen Carter is first in pressures with 23, first in hurries with 17, and third in sacks with 3.5. It's throwing a couple of forced fumbles there as well, and I think it's safe to say that Jalen Carter is on pace for an all-pro season. You know, forget about Defensive Player of the Year. Definitely think Nathaniel Hackett will have his work cut out for him on Sunday to game plan against that whole defensive front. Jets have given up 15 sacks on the year, which is 8th worst in the league. And they just lost their right tackle, Elijah Vera-Tucker, for the year, who is arguably their best offensive lineman. So with the amount of names on that Eagles defensive front, they're going to have a right tackle who's coming in off the bench. I think I'll expect that Jalen Carter will have a few one-on-one matchups throughout the game. and looking to hear his name called a couple of times on Sunday. One thing I want an end to just put an end to is the whole how did so many teams pass on Jalen Carter? We know exactly why teams passed on Jalen Carter. It's because of the character issues. He's producing just like everyone thought he could produce if he was put in the right environment, in the right position, and he performed well off the field. And that's exactly what he's doing. So fair play to him. But let's stop that nonsense of just ignoring the exact reason why a few teams are afraid to pick him higher up.
Spoken like a true Scot.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jason, because it's also like when teams are selecting, then it's not like everyone's like, oh, snap, we should have had Jalen Carter. Everyone's thrilled with themselves on draft night. And it's like, yeah, there is a few teams that are will say Jalen Carter, but we all know what happens. And it's exactly what you said, that he had the character concerns, whether he was guilty, whether it was his fault or not. But it's like, give me a break on hindsight being 2020, you know?
Let's talk about the Ravens. The Ravens are going to London this week and they're playing the Titans. Titans home game. And I know Mark and you boys were bringing up that you want to talk about the passing game. Obviously, for people wondering, like they're in a situation where Lamar is, I think he's like 18 for 19th in the league in points added per dropback. The Ravens are currently 10th in offensive DVOA, which doesn't really tell you much. They were 16th 2 seasons ago. But it feels like this sort of switch from Greg Roman to Todd Monken hasn't really done much. Their offensive line has been sort of held back a bit. They're going in the right direction, but it feels, Mark, like it's taken time. And I've seen a lot of comments today. Like, maybe I'm just wrong, right? A lot of comments on like a video of Lamar Jackson about Odell Beckham has the wide receiver bum traveled to London. I couldn't believe the derogatory comments that were being used. He is in London. Apparently, he's dealing with some ankle issues. He's expected to play Sunday. What's the odds he doesn't play on Sunday? Do you ever hear about the time he went to London? Do you ever hear about that story?
Well, what's the story in particular? I know images of it. I remember a lad found him outside the hotel and he was wearing the Odell Beckham jersey at the time. But that's
that's what it was. I'll tell you about a different one on WhatsApp after. But the great guy. I have nothing but good things to say about Odell Beckham Jr. Go for it, Mark. Take the stage, my man. What do you reckon?
No, I think you're right. I think that we were sold on this being behind Aaron Rodgers. This was the biggest story of the offseason, like how exciting and explosive it was going to be. And it's like, it was supposed to happen straight out the gate. Now, things don't always have to happen like that, but like for such an exciting storyline, I think it's been disappointing. Like, so much so that, when we were talking about the slate of games, it was all like, we're going to get to see it in person. The offense as a whole, the team as a whole, hasn't put up 30 points in a game yet. Like, more than half the league has done that. Zay Flowers is their leading receiver. You can say his average per game is 28th in the league. I mean, that doesn't say anything about an explosive offense or an explosive wide receiver. And then you see issues like on the weekend, the miscommunication. Tyler Linderbaum thinks he has a guy offside and snaps the ball. Lamar Jackson doesn't expect it. He catches in, like, they suddenly turn the ball over on 4th down. So it's like, there's teething problems, and then there's just like, yeah, like you said, like they've prioritized the passing game, which is great, and there is some improvements. I don't know if they're justifiable enough considering the hype, but like, if they can't get over their one biggest flaw, it'll be for nothing, and that's the drops. It's like, you could have the best scheme in the world, but if you're going to drop, like we saw Rashad Bateman do in the end zone the other day, he can bang the ground all he wants afterwards. It's like, it comes in and out of his hands. The same thing for Nelson Aguilar in the third quarter. It's like, Lamar Jackson is playing phenomenal. He's worth the contract. His pocket presence is moving. It's all phenomenal. But considering the talent around him, it's like, it still seems to be all around Mark Andrews. And it's like, OBJ, injury or not with his ankle, he had 2 catches for 18 yards the other day. Where's the explosion, Michael?
Fair enough. I mean, I think a lot of people thought whenever they seen the amount of money that OBJ was being paid, I thought we'd get a bit more production chasing out of him. Maybe he's going to pop up, because the last time I seen him play, he hasn't done much since, and that was nearly 2 years ago in a Super Bowl. Jason, are we going to see OBJ pop out? It would be typical Jason if he was to pop out with 2 or 3 touchdowns on Sunday in London and then go quiet for another 6 months.
Yeah, like his stats is really lacking on the year. I know he's been a bit banged up, but I don't think he's cracked 40 yards yet in a game. To be honest, I thought that contract was massively overpaid when it was announced in the offseason. As you say, he's been a couple of years now before he's been the threat that he used to be. And it's funny that you pick DeAndre Hopkins as your headache player. I think I've mentioned him a couple of times in this podcast now, but he went for less than OBJ. And having watched DeAndre in depth last year as a Cardinals fan, like he has a lot more talent and a lot more left to give, I feel like, than Odell Beckham Jr. So I thought at the time that contract was an overpay, and I still think it's an overpay. And it's looking like it, unfortunately, so far. I am glad, though, that with problems with the Ravens passing attack, I'm glad there, Mark, that you mentioned how great Lamar Jackson has actually been, because he is absolutely not the problem. And if you were to look at the box score, you might be fooled into thinking he's the problem. On Sunday, he had just 238 yards, 38 attempts, no touchdowns, and an interception. And you might, even if you look at the highlights of the game, you're probably just going to see that interception at the end in the end zone thrown towards Odell Beckham Jr. and make the conclusion, okay, Lamar Jackson was struggling. Absolutely not. 7 drops from the wide receivers. It was the third most since 2017 in the league. That's not even including Zay Flowers, who slipped on like a 50-yard plus pass. Mark Andrews, who was his most reliable target, he had a drop in the end zone as well. He had another drop. I think every drop was for a first down, or 2 of them were for 20 plus yards, 2 were for touchdowns, and the rest were for first downs, I think. So these are massive game-changing drops. And if those receivers are making the plays when they're put in the right position, then we'd be talking about Lamar Jackson much differently through 5 games, because he still looks just as dangerous on the ground. And I don't think his stats are fully reflecting how good he's doing through the air as well. He should be in the MVP conversations if the receivers were living up to their end of the bargain, to be honest.
I'm so glad, Jason, that you mentioned there the interception in the end zone, because PFF put out a tweet of the throw and they have it going straight to Joey Porter Jr. from Lamar Jackson and the little bullseye emoji. And I'm like, please, Odell Beckham, give your quarterback some help and bat the ball or something. He looks so weak. He just, like, Joey Porter Jr. like beats him, and like he's not keeping his hands down or whatever, but like the way Joey Porter Jr. swipes his own hands, it kind of blocks OBJ from getting his hands up to do anything. And it just looks like OBJ's just standing there. And I'm like, you can help out your guy and make sure that that's not picked off. And then it's like people will put it on Lamar being like he's throwing the pick. And it's like, he's doing everything out there. It's like, yeah, if you do want to give him that one mistake that he's obviously partly to blame there, but like, when he's doing it all for the team, it's like, give me a break.
I'm surprised PFF put out that tweet, because Lamar Jackson was their number 1 rated player on the week, which again just sums up how the box score doesn't do it justice, and you can't analyze a game just based on those stats.
It goes back to the July-August conversation with people that write 4,000 word articles to say the Ravens are going to be great this season, and by week 6 they're deleting their tweets.
But you know what? Let's we have to look. I have to say, I think I never gave into that hype. Like, go back and listen. But I will say, and this isn't any kind of a shot or like patting on the back, 2 of our most prominent guests that we had on the off season, Colleen Wolfe and Mina Combs, were both saying this is the thing that the most exciting to see. And like, we all got swept up in it, but there was plenty of signs that it wasn't. Like, don't get me wrong, we did do the talking about it too. But it's like there was plenty of signs. Like, I never bought into the OBJ stuff. And I looked, again, this isn't the time for celebratory laps. Oh, we told you so. Jason and I knew that the contract was never worth. But it's like, it was never going to just click straight away. And they have plenty of work to do. And it's just frustrating when Lamar got his contract and it took what he did to get his contract to get it. And then they come out as flat as, like, look, I'm not going to say they're as bad as the New England Patriots, but like, the two wide receivers or sets of wide receivers look about as comparable, or I'd be least envious of those 2 wide receiver cores as any in the league.
Did they win on Sunday?
The Ravens, I think the Ravens do, but sure, the Titans are so hit and miss at the moment. It's like there's no idea. And then it's like,
so hard.
what injuries are we going to have for the Ravens? I mean, that's why they obviously lost against the Colts. But like, they're one of those teams that is losing themselves, and it's particularly those drops. Like, Lamar had 15 incompletions the other day, 7 of them are drops. Like, that's outrageous.
Shocking. And thank God for them and their fans that are getting over there so early in the week, and they can actually relax a bit. Lamar looks very happy to be out of the country, Jason. So time will tell. Jason, come on over on Sunday. Come on.
Need a bit more time.
We'll wheel you about.
Need a bit more time. It'll be worth the wait, don't worry.
I can't wait. We're going to finish off with a special this week. We're going to talk about an Irish rugby player that will make it in the NFL because, and here's the jinx we're all waiting for, I think we're going to win the World Cup, boys.
Oh, no, no.
It's just, it's that feeling.
Oh, you didn't.
Oh,
you
you
didn't
didn't say anything.
The Guinness ad, for God's sake, Michael.
I'm the boy. I'm the boy in the ad, on the Guinness ad that says, I think we might, like, you know.
What number of listeners just sat there? Because I would be Xing off this podcast in other.
Don't X off the podcast. We need you. We appreciate you. Jeff Reinebold coming January, February. Anyway, back to that. I'm just gonna start off with my player. And I'm gonna make this short. I'm gonna make it sweet. The longest successful field goal in NFL history was done in September the 26th, 2021 by a team that we just talked about, Baltimore Ravens, Justin Tucker, Johnny Saxton. I have no doubt, like, Johnny Saxton will be trying out for an NFL team before the end of the year.
What? What?
Yeah.
Based on his World Cup pedigree, that people will give him a go?
Look, sorry, let me just rephrase that. Before Easter next year, Johnny Saxton will try out for an NFL team. So will somebody else. I can't say who that would be, but just leave it with me. All right?
I'm speechless. Go on, Jason. Get me out of here.
Would make a good chapter.
I'll tell you who the other person is off camera.
Wasn't there a story of Ronan O'Gara trying out for the Miami Dolphins back in the day? I think it was complete bullshit.
That's the LA Chargers.
What was that thing that Ronan O'Gara said again? Les opportunités says enorme.
Are we doing French on this podcast?
I would believe that Johnny will do that, and I am of the opinion that there is somebody that's quite well known that will be doing that in the next, not Johnny Saxton, that will be doing something in the next 6 months, and I can't say any more than that. Does that make sense? I'll tell you off camera. You're on.
I can't wait to wrap this one up. Jason, you have to go first because I have two that I don't know which one to go for, so I'll base it off yours.
Yeah, I don't think mine's going to be actually trying out anytime soon, but I'm going to go with Cork man, Peter O'Mahony. I just feel like flanker, you know, there might be a home for him in the tight end position there or something. I can see him being a good blocker, good at going up and making a catch. He won't have people to lift him up in a line out, but maybe there's a new play to be made there in the NFL. But, you know, he's a bit of a silent leader, fun guy. I served him in the off license I used to work at. He likes Corona.
Did you?
That's pretty much what I'm basing all this off. Yeah, Black Rock man. So yeah, I think Peter O'Mahony could do well in the NFL.
Well, I love that, and I know that Mark, just because he wants to get into the game on Sunday, he's going to pick Stuart McCluskey or Ian Henderson. Am I right?
I have who I genuinely think they could have the talent to become an NFL player. Their measurables mightn't be right, but I was kind of looking between Andrew Porter or Ty Furlong, the two props, obviously, because this is so funny. I was at the game the other day, the Scotland-Ireland game, and Andrew Porter jumps up and he's like, they're after winning a penalty, and I did not come up with this topic. It was Michael came out with this idea, but I was like, geez, I literally thought at the game that Andrew Porter looks like an NFL player celebrating after a stop on fourth down. Like, it's the same kind of situation, winning a penalty versus a stop on fourth down, that I was like, whoa, eureka moment. But as I thought about it coming closer to the podcast, I actually went and checked the measurables. Now, I thought Ty Furlong, maybe just because he'll be 31 next month, that they might match you up. But if you have an offensive lineman, you need to be about 6'3" at least, really. These lads are both 6 foot. This is incredible, lads, right? Andrew Porter is listed at 115 kg. Tyg Furlong 125 kg. We know that those lads are huge. We know that those lads are massive. If you compare that to an NFL offensive lineman, the lads are touching 145, 150 kg. It's like, imagine there's a 25 kg weight discrepancy with Tyg Furlong and the NFL offensive lineman. That might actually be what prevents him, when they're testing at the combine or whatever, that someone says a man as big as Tyg Furlong cannot be on the offensive line.
I think that's
I can't believe it.
There's a reason why NFL players need oxygen masks on the sideline when they're after doing a few plays or a big run or whatever. You have to be built different, I suppose, to last out there on the pitch.
I think Tyg Furlong gets a big man TD in the NFL, like 100%. We've seen he has the hands to get it done.
It's it feels to me like, so just firstly, like I yawned and laughed at the same time there in a good way. I don't know what happened there.
That lawn cost me the social media moment of the week that we could put out. It's like, it'll just be Michael yawning at my my take.
I'm just tired from London. Another week this weekend. Let's just finish off. Look, this is an NFL podcast, but very quickly, are we going to beat the All Blacks? I think we will. I'm getting really into this, boys. I worry for me and Mark on Sunday, Jason. I think people are going to look at us walking into the press box with sunglasses on. How are you getting on? in all seriousness, it would be class. Like, I really hope it'll happen. Please, God. Please, Jesus.
I go to the semi-final after it, so I have very personal reasons for wanting them to get across the line, because otherwise I'll be going to see New Zealand versus Wales. One, that'll be a useless game, and two, I will not be ready to see New Zealand. Oh well, yeah. Let's see.
They've got the best anthem outside of Italy and France and Ireland, of course. Anywho, right, that's it. Week 6 of the NFL season is upon us. If you're a Broncos fan, good luck on Thursday night. Like me, I'll be watching on Friday morning. I'm not watching that. I watched the Commanders against the Bears last week. I can't do it again this week. Stay tuned for some great content coming your way all weekend, primarily on Instagram, with some on X as well. NFL Ireland, London baby, one last time this year before we get ready for Frankfurt in a few weeks. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Jason Hayes, presented by 888 Sport, the official betting partner of the NFL. This has been Pro Football Ireland, Ireland's biggest NFL podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll chat to you soon. Give me a mug. It's not fun.